Imagine this. You're walking through a city you've never visited before. The sky is gray, not quite overcast, not quite bright. You pass a stranger on the street and for some reason, something about the tilt of their head or the glint in their eye, your heart races. You don't know them. You've never met them. But something ancient inside you reacts before thought even has a chance to arrive. Now stop. Ask yourself this. What made you feel that? You didn't consciously choose it. You didn't analyze the situation, run a logical algorithm, and then decide to feel uneasy. The feeling came first, instinctual, automatic, almost alien. And only afterward did your conscious mind scramble to explain it away. Maybe they looked like someone I knew. Maybe it was just a bad night's sleep. But none of that was the source. The truth, the real source, was already buried. This is the terrifying paradox of your life. You think you're in control. You think you decide. You think your thoughts are your own, your preferences self-generated, your choices free. But what if they aren't? What if most of what you call you is just a surface illusion, a narrative you tell yourself to stay sane, while something far more ancient, far more primal, quietly runs the show underneath? Your subconscious mind doesn't speak in language. It doesn't reason, debate, or negotiate. It whispers through impulses. It programs your routines. It shapes your fears. It builds your identity not with facts, but with buried memories, unresolved trauma, ancestral pain, and repetitive emotional patterns so deep you forgot they ever started. This unseen force decides who you love, who you hate, and what you're willing to risk or never dare to dream. But here's the unsettling part. You didn't choose it. You didn't choose to internalize the shame of your childhood. You didn't ask to inherit your parents' anxiety or your culture's expectations. You didn't consent to the 1,000 messages implanted in your psyche when you were too young to defend yourself. And yet, those messages are still driving you. You wake up with a sense of dread. You sabotage relationships. You chase approval. You avoid failure so intensely that you never even try. And all of it feels logical, rational, yours, but it's not. It's a script, written long ago, buried in the dark corridors of your subconscious, where the real version of you is not living, but sleeping, dreaming a life that someone else programmed. Now pause, breathe, and really ask yourself, how many of your desires are truly your own? How many of your limitations were whispered to you by a world afraid of those who fully wake up? How many times have you almost changed, almost transformed, only to be pulled back by some invisible force you couldn't explain? You call it bad luck, procrastination, lack of motivation. But what if it's none of those things? What if it's resistance from your subconscious, that vast internal empire built not to liberate you, but to protect you from pain, yes, but also from change, from risk, from transformation? And here's the darkest truth of all. Your subconscious doesn't care if you're happy, cares if you're safe. It will keep you broke, single, addicted, or endlessly self-sabotaging, if that's what feels familiar. Because to the subconscious, the familiar equals survival, and survival is its god. So now ask again, are you living? Or are you just repeating a survival pattern dressed up as a life? Imagine waking up, not from sleep, but from yourself. Imagine realizing you've been hypnotized since childhood, every belief you hold a spell cast by a frightened world. Imagine meeting your real self for the first time, and realizing you don't even recognize them. This is not just self-help. This is not think positive nonsense. This is war. A war between your conditioned mind and your true self. Between who you've been told you are, and who you actually are underneath it all. And the battlefield? It's your subconscious. But how did we get here? Why is this unseen force so powerful? And why does no one talk about it, at least not in ways that matter? The answer lies deeper than psychology alone can explain. To understand the power of your subconscious, we must descend into myth, philosophy, trauma, evolution, into the roots of your own identity. To understand the subconscious, we must first realize this. It is not a malfunction. It is not a glitch in the system. It is the system. Your subconscious is not some mysterious side program running in the background of your life. It is your life, at least the one you're currently living. And here lies the great problem. What we call free will is often just the conscious mind justifying what the subconscious has already decided. Carl Jung didn't mince words. He said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Let that sink in. You think it's fate that you keep ending up in the same kind of toxic relationship, You think it's fate that your career never quite takes off. You think it's fate that anxiety follows you no matter how much you try to stay positive. It's not fate, it's programming. Somewhere in your early development, your nervous system absorbed patterns of love, of fear, of power dynamics, of approval, of punishment, and these became truth to your subconscious. Not because they were true, but because they were repeated, because they were felt. The subconscious doesn't care about logic. It cares about emotionally charged experience. A child hears "you're not good enough" one time, maybe it's subtle, maybe it's shouted. But if it comes from a parent, a teacher, someone the child depends on, it's not just a sentence. It becomes a truth branded into the subconscious. Now fast forward 20 years. That same person can be in a room full of opportunity, but something inside them says, "I'm not ready." Not because it's true, but because it's familiar. Nietzsche once said, "Man is a rope tied between beast and overman, a rope over an abyss." And that rope is frayed by subconscious contradiction. On one side, your conscious mind wants growth, ambition, greatness. But your subconscious? It wants safety, familiarity, control. So what happens? Self-sabotage. Not because you hate yourself, but because part of you has equated change with danger. This is not mere theory. Modern neuroscience confirms it. The brain's amygdala, its fear center, activates not only in the face of real danger, but also in response to anything unknown. Even positive unknowns. So even success, even love, even freedom can trigger fear if your subconscious has been conditioned to avoid them. Schopenhauer believed that much of human suffering comes not from the world, but from the will, a blind, inner force driving us without our awareness. And what is the subconscious, if not the very engine of that will? You're not a rational thinker operating in a logical universe. You're a biological survival machine haunted by ancient pain, constantly replaying internal loops in hopes of resolving wounds that were never yours to carry. The subconscious holds your inner child hostage. The child who was ignored. The child who had to be perfect to be loved. The child who learned to disappear to survive. That child never grew up. They just learned to wear a mask. And now that mask is your personality. The masks we wear, confidence, humor, rebellion, kindness, often originate not from authentic expression, but from the need to adapt to unsafe environments. You became charming because approval meant safety. You became quiet because attention meant punishment. You became the achiever because failure meant shame. And now you don't even know where the performance ends and you begin. This is the hidden problem. You are not living your life. You are reliving your emotional past, projected into the present. The subconscious doesn't care that you're no longer a child. It doesn't care that you're in a different job, a new city, a new relationship. It runs the same script because that script, no matter how miserable, once kept you safe. And now it limits everything. Your capacity for love, your ability to take risks, your connection to purpose, your vision of what's possible. But it goes deeper. Philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre wrote about bad faith, the act of lying to ourselves to escape the responsibility of freedom. That's what the subconscious helps us do. It shields us from existential terror. It whispers, "Stay here, it's safer," even when we are drowning, because freedom is terrifying. To wake up is to take responsibility for everything you were never responsible for. To break the spell is to admit that the cage you're in was built with thoughts that aren't even yours. You were born free, yes, but by the time you could walk, you had already been downloaded with generations of unresolved fear. Do you see it now? Your subconscious mind is not just a storage unit for memories. It's the operating system of your life. It's where trauma becomes truth, where conditioning becomes character, where pain becomes pattern. And unless you go down into that hidden layer, into the places you swore you'd never revisit, you will continue living as a puppet pulled by invisible strings. But this isn't hopeless. This isn't a death sentence. It's a map. Because once you understand the roots, psychological, philosophical, evolutionary, you begin to see the subconscious for what it is. Not your enemy, but a frightened protector doing its best with broken instructions. So the real question isn't, how do I get rid of my subconscious patterns? It's, how do I reprogram them? How do I make the unconscious conscious? To answer that, we must go even deeper. Because now that we know the problem, we must confront the most dangerous truth of all. This unseen force is not just shaping you, it's shaping the world. You think you're making choices, You think you're choosing that job, that relationship, that lifestyle. But what if you're not? What if every choice is a reenactment of an unconscious memory? A loop you didn't choose, running because it's too familiar to resist? This is the prison most people live in. A life dictated by unexamined assumptions, inherited pain, and quiet, unrelenting fears. The subconscious doesn't scream. It whispers. And because it whispers so quietly, we mistake it for our own voice. Here's the terrifying part. You're not just acting on subconscious patterns. You're building a world with them. Think about it. If enough people are operating on the same subconscious scripts of fear, lack, control, competition, trauma, then our collective reality becomes a reflection of our collective wounds. This is not just psychological. It's structural. We create institutions, media, relationships, and systems that mirror the subconscious fears of the masses. A society addicted to productivity isn't efficient. It's traumatized. It confuses doing with being because people were never loved for who they were, only for what they accomplished. A culture obsessed with appearance is in vain. It's wounded. It teaches people to perform instead of be seen because being seen once meant being judged, or worse, rejected. Our entire world is shaped by what we've never healed, and you can see it everywhere. Why do people work jobs they hate? Because they were told survival matters more than passion. Because their subconscious is wired to avoid failure, not pursue joy. Why do people stay in toxic relationships? Because their inner child believes love must be earned through suffering. Because chaos feels like home. Why do some sabotage opportunities at the edge of success? Because part of them still equates visibility with danger. Because the subconscious isn't driven by your dreams, it's driven by your conditioning. This is why affirmation posters don't work. Why repeating "I am confident" doesn't change you. Because underneath, your subconscious is screaming, "No, you're not. You're still the scared kid who was laughed at in school. You're still the invisible one." You can't override a wound with a word. You must revisit the root. And here's where the consequences become dangerous. The subconscious mind doesn't only shape individuals. It shapes nations. A country traumatized by scarcity builds an economy on hoarding. A culture that fears death becomes obsessed with youth and appearance. A people wounded by betrayal create systems that value control over trust. So when people ask, why is the world like this? The real answer is painfully simple. Because the world is the externalization of the subconscious minds of its creators. And that includes you. Let's go deeper still. The subconscious is not some locked vault. It's porous. It absorbs everything. The images you scroll past but don't question. The offhand comments you hear growing up. The expectations you silently adopt from parents, teachers, friends. The cultural scripts about who you should be. Every repetition is a rewrite. Every emotionally charged moment gets stored not as fact, but as truth. And these truths, they don't sit quietly. They become reflexes. Have you ever flinched from praise? Shied away from a spotlight? Felt guilt for resting? Felt worthless when you weren't productive? That's not your personality. That's programming. And here's the sinister part. The subconscious doesn't just absorb. It filters. It decides what you notice, what you ignore, what opportunities you perceive, what threats you anticipate. It's the gatekeeper of perception. This is confirmed by neuroscience. The reticular activating system, RAS, is a filter that determines what information gets through to your conscious awareness. Guess what programs the RAS? Your subconscious beliefs. Believe you're not good enough? Your brain will ignore evidence to the contrary. Believe money is evil? You'll subconsciously repel abundance. Believe you're unlovable? You'll gravitate toward those who confirm it. Your beliefs create your reality, not metaphorically but neurologically. So we must ask, what is your subconscious currently creating? Look around. The friends you keep, the risks you avoid, the dreams you delay, the emotions you suppress, all of it. The subconscious is the puppeteer behind the curtain, pulling on strings you didn't even know were there. And the consequences? They don't just affect your internal world. They create generational patterns. You pass down your pain in subtle, invisible ways, through tone, through silence, through unresolved emotions that leak out as fear, control, or neglect. The subconscious is where legacies of trauma either get passed down or broken. It's the battlefield of cycles. And unless you become aware of it, you become a carrier of patterns that were never yours, inflicting wounds you never meant to. So what now? You've seen the hidden hand. You felt its grip. You know the cage isn't made of metal, it's made of memory. And worse, you've helped reinforce it. But now that you've seen it, you can't unsee it. The spell is breaking. And from here, a question emerges from the silence. What if you could rebel against your programming? What if you could rewire your very reality, not with effort, but with awareness? Because somewhere in the ruins of your subconscious lies your freedom. And that leads us into the next phase. Not just survival, not just insight, but rebellion. You've spent your whole life inside a script you didn't write. A narrative whispered into your mind by society, culture, trauma, and time. But here's the truth no one tells you. You can tear the script apart. Not with blind positivity. Not with hustle or surface-level motivation. But with a kind of rebellion most people are too afraid to begin. A rebellion of awareness. Let's be clear, this is not self-help fluff. This is psychological war. You are fighting an invisible enemy that wears your face. Your ego. Your programming. Your deepest fears dressed as logic. So how do you begin this rebellion? First, by listening to the silence. You've been drowning in noise, notifications, advice, opinions, expectations. But in the silence, there's a voice you've ignored your entire life. It's the voice of the subconscious, but not the part that echoes your pain. It's the part that remembers your essence before the world touched it. Sit in that silence. Not to clear your mind, but to watch it. Watch the thoughts. Watch the self-hate. Watch the hunger for validation. Watch how your mind tries to escape stillness. And realize that's not you. That's the actor playing the role society gave it. But you're the observer behind the actor. The one who can rewrite the role. Now comes the hard part, shadow work. Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The rebellion begins when you look your shadow in the eye. This means confronting everything you've buried. The resentment you never voiced. The childhood pain you rationalized. The jealousy you denied. The grief you numbed. The part of you that secretly sabotages your joy. Don't try to destroy it. Integrate it. Because your shadow isn't your enemy. It's your suppressed intelligence. It holds the power you gave up when you decided it was safer to be small. To face it is to reclaim that power. Let's talk about radical responsibility. This is not about blaming yourself. It's about recognizing that even if the programming wasn't your fault, the deprogramming is your duty. This is where Nietzsche becomes relevant. His idea of the Übermensch, the Overman, wasn't about superiority. It was about self-overcoming. The ability to rise above inherited morality, cultural scripts, and even personal limitations to create a new internal authority. You become your own compass. Not society, not your parents, not your fears. But how? Start with your language. Words are codes. Each sentence you say programs the subconscious a little deeper. Stop saying I can't. Replace I should with I choose. Stop outsourcing your agency with phrases like, that's just the way I am. You're not a static character. You're a living script, constantly being rewritten by the stories you believe. Next, observe your environment. Everything around you is reinforcing your subconscious patterns. Your friends, your habits, your media, your daily rituals. Do they reflect the healed version of you or the wounded one? Because here's a hard truth. You can't rewire your subconscious in the same environment that broke it. Sometimes rebellion means walking away. From people who don't see you. From roles that limit you. From versions of yourself you've outgrown. Now comes the alchemy, imagination. The subconscious doesn't speak in logic. It speaks in emotion and images. This is why visualization is so powerful, because it's the language your subconscious understands. But don't just visualize success. Visualize healing. Imagine the moment you forgive yourself. Imagine the first time you choose joy over fear. Imagine walking into a room and not needing approval. Imagine your body relaxed, your heart open, your mind clear. Feel it. Make it visceral. Because the subconscious doesn't care about what's real. It only cares about what's repeated and emotionally charged. Repetition plus emotion equals rewiring. That's not wishful thinking, it's neuroplasticity. Your brain literally reconfigures itself based on what you feel consistently. But none of this happens without discipline. Not the grind culture kind of discipline, but the sacred kind. The discipline of choosing awareness over autopilot. The discipline of sitting with discomfort instead of distracting yourself. The discipline of saying no to what is familiar but toxic. The discipline of becoming who you were before the world told you who to be. And here's the reward: freedom. Not the kind marketed by ads and gurus, but the quiet, internal freedom of knowing you are no longer a slave to your past. That's the rebellion. You are no longer just the effect of life. You become the cause. You stop reacting. You start creating. From this point forward, you don't just observe reality. You craft it, because your subconscious is no longer your captor. It's your co-creator. And when you step into that power, something incredible happens. You don't just change your life. You change what's possible for those around you. You become a living invitation for others to break their own cycles. And that brings us to the final step, the ultimate truth, the realization that will shatter everything you thought was real, the one insight that will redefine your reality forever. What if the cage was never locked? What if everything you've been waiting for, peace, purpose, power, has been quietly waiting for you to remember? Now imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a vast ocean. The sky is storming above you, your feet buried in shifting sand, waves crashing with the fury of your suppressed potential. Behind you, a life of familiar suffering, a trail of choices made in fear, of dreams you buried because someone told you they were unrealistic. You turn to face the storm, and something inside you whispers, "This storm is not against you. It is you." This is the ultimate truth the world is too afraid to tell you. The subconscious mind is not just a part of you. It is you. You've spent your life treating it like a broken machine that needs fixing, when in reality it's a sacred mirror, reflecting everything you believe about yourself and the world. And here's the twist. The subconscious isn't hiding truth from you. It's revealing exactly what you're ready to handle. It obeys you. It listens. It watches every word you speak. It absorbs every story you believe. It reflects every wound you refuse to heal. So if your life feels stuck, chaotic, unfulfilling, it's not because life hates you. It's because your subconscious is simply playing out the exact story you've internalized, on repeat. This is the real matrix, not machines, not governments, not social media algorithms. The real matrix is the illusion that you're a passive player in your own story, that the world happens to you instead of through you. But once you see the illusion, something irreversible happens. You wake up, not just intellectually, not with facts or books, but in your body, your bones, your nervous system. You feel the weight of the truth you've ignored. You are the creator. This is where ancient wisdom and modern science converge. Neuroscientists call it neuroplasticity. Mystics call it conscious manifestation. Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating the conscious and unconscious. But the essence is the same. The world you experience is filtered through the mind you've conditioned. Want to change the world? Change the filter. And that starts by realizing you are not your thoughts. You are the space that holds them. You are not your past. You are the awareness that survived it. You are not broken. You are buried. Buried beneath shame that was never yours to carry. Beneath voices that were never yours to echo. Beneath stories that were never yours to live. And now, for the first time, you have the power to unearth what's been hidden. But it comes with a price. Responsibility. Because when you realize you are the sculptor of your subconscious, you can no longer blame the chisel for the shape of your life. That's terrifying, but it's also liberating. Because in that moment, when you stop outsourcing your power, you realize something staggering. You've been dreaming, and the dream was never yours. You inherited it. You absorbed it. You repeated it. But now, you wake up. And when you do, you don't need motivation. You don't need affirmations taped to a mirror. You don't need to become better. You simply return to your original self. The one who was curious before being told to be quiet. The one who was bold before being taught to be safe. The one who loved before being taught to earn it. This is not the end of your transformation. This is the beginning of your remembrance. Because the final, most powerful truth is not that your subconscious can be reprogrammed. It's that it's already been doing exactly what you told it to. Your reality isn't lying to you. It's obeying you. The chaos, the doubt, the fear, those were your unconscious commands. But now, you see. And once you see, you can't unsee. So what do you do with this truth? You write a new story. But this time, consciously. This time with reverence. This time, knowing the storm inside you is not your enemy, it's your birthright. It's your power. It's your raw, unfiltered self begging to be remembered. You stop trying to become and start to uncover. You stop chasing peace and create it moment by moment. You stop fearing the unknown and start listening to it. Because here's what they never taught you. The subconscious isn't a tool. It's a sacred mirror. It's not beneath you. It is you. And you were never lost. You were simply asleep. And now, you are awake. Welcome back.